benefits. Gordon Brown recently said that ending the two-child limit, as well as the benefit cap, would be among the most effective ways of reducing child poverty. Kinnock said, I really want them to move in that direction because the figures are that if the government did do that, it would mean that 600,000 children fewer would be in poverty. So what do you make of that? If we do it, it's going to cost money, and where should that money come from? Are you affected by the cap? 0345 6060 973. Clacton. Hello, Ben.
Hello there. Yes, I wouldn't get rid of the cap. What I would do would be to have universal free school meals, because you could solve 4 problems with that. The demographic, people would have more children, as you say, and they would need more children. Otherwise, there's a massive problem going down the road. And also the meals could be better than they are at the moment. They have deteriorated since they brought in the standards. They would raise those standards to a decent standard, and then that would give children better health, and the National Health Service would benefit from that, because there would be less illnesses connected with highly processed foods. Because there was a survey in the United States where 12,000 people were tested on highly processed foods, and there's a link with cancer on that. Yeah, that was recent.
Well, I think that's a settled argument, isn't it? You can't survive on highly processed foods and continue to be well.
Well, this is one of the things that came out recently. We've known that for a while, but obviously they've now proved 12,000 people is a very large group, and you would benefit the country completely, because you'd create more employment, because the food would have to be cooked from scratch instead of all these processed foods and vending machines and all that rubbish that you get now in schools, because we've done it. I was a governor for 35 years in the London Borough of Haringey, and the last school I was in for 12 years before I retired. During the Osborne and Cameron time, with the cuts, we actually used school charities, school meals charities, and Tottenham Hotspur helped us a lot, and also the local supermarkets would give us food free for the breakfasts and the dinners. So we've done it. We served all the children in the school with a decent meal. And then we brought the children in weekends to teach them to cook a decent meal from scratch. And then we got the parents in on a Wednesday evening, brought them in, and they cooked from scratch, because they had got out of because they worked, both couples had to work, they didn't have much chance to cook from scratch. So we bring them in one night up. But I mean, all it can be done very cheaply, not costing a fortune. Plus, it's four areas where you can actually help. And if you just give a benefit cap, you raise that, then some parents the children don't benefit from that, because the parents are spending on something else, smoking or drinking or whatever.
Okay.
Whereas if you universal free school meals, it saves a fortune for the families themselves, because they don't have to worry about that. The average is £20 a week. So therefore, for each child, you've got that anyway. So it's much more beneficial if you do that.
I was interested that when you said that standards have dropped since.
Yes.
What was it? What was the phrase you used? Since.
Well, they brought standards in about 10 years ago, and the standards in Scotland were higher than they are in England. And gradually over time, because they brought in more privatisation, then more pizzas and chips and all that sort of thing came in, and they weren't on the original high standards. We got to raise the standards so the food they're getting is cooked from scratch and it's healthy, and therefore you save money on the National Health Service, billions, by not having people that are affected by eating disorders because of processed foods.
Yeah, and not just when they're children either. When it will set them up for a lifetime of illness if they have a bad start in life.
Yes, and it's amazing what we achieved, because there was a waiting list to get the come in and do the weekend, because we had a rolling program of 32 children. 16 would study for exams, the other 16 would cook for them, and the staff that were there to look after them. And then the following weekend, the other 16 that had studied the week before would come in and they would do the cooking. So you ended up with, and we had a chef, a professional chef that was actually there teaching about food it was education on food.
Right. Well,
they held that the rest of their life.
Yeah, well, that seems like a really good idea. It seems extraordinary that people would need educating about how to make food, as to my eyes, every other program on television is how to make food. It's the only ones that aren't about dancing are about cooking.
Don't watch them much.
Well, I suppose that's right. Yeah, I suppose. All right, good to talk to you, Ben. Thanks for that. Are you affected by the two-child benefit cap? And if so, how is it affecting your family? And by removing the cap, would people be encouraged to have more children? Because it appears that is exactly what we need. I mean, we have an aging population which is not being replaced fast enough to maintain the working population. Now, we already have a period which we know is coming. There's nothing we can do about it. There's a period of about 20 years in which we will not have enough people who are earning money to pay for the pensions and to take care of the people who are older and who will be of an increasing number. But if we continue down this road, then it's going to be more than 20 years, because there's nothing you can do about the developmental rate of a human being. It takes 20 years to become economically active. That's just that. And we've gone through a period now when we don't have enough babies being made. So it's coming at us, and it will hit us regardless. It's just that, are we going to do anything about it? And would that actually make an effect? If the two-child benefit cap was raised, would more people be more encouraged to have more children? And I would be interested to hear from people who have made a decision about whether they're going to have children based on that issue. Holland Park, Nick.
Good evening, Nick. The first thing is, that fellow from Save the Tom or whatever he was, did he describe Neil Kinnock as highly respected? That guy should be on the comedy circuit. The second thing is, I don't think Kinnock could ever have read Dickens, because Dickens was, I read a lot of all of Dickens and many times, and he was a great advocate of self-help, hard work, and in Little Dorrit, he specifically bemoans and berates a family with so many children because they're so poor. So come on, let's get real. But I do agree that the two-child benefit cap should be removed immediately and replaced with a zero-child cap. Absolute madness. By the way, the saving the government is talking about with the two-child cap, which is 3-point-something billion, it's loose change to what is actually being spent with just two children, which is over 13 billion a year. Big ticket item.
Yeah, well, children are important, are they not?
I would say they are, but let me try another one on you. You're not going to like this one, but it's a fact that the principal cause of child poverty is poor people having children. So subsidising poor people to have more children would seem to me to exasperate the problem rather than solve it. Absolute madness. And by the way,
well, you could go further than that, shouldn't you? The principal reason that we have poor people is because we have poor people. So let's get rid of poor people.
No, I don't think that works the same way. And I also want to say something else. There was a very good point made earlier by the person from Save the Tom or Tim or whatever he was, about, people might have 3 or 4 children and then they become unemployed or they become sick. Guess what? It's called unemployment benefit or disability benefit. We already have a solution for that. And I want to say one other thing. This constant mantra that we need more people, whether it be people blamming out babies or mass migration because we're getting older and we need more people. Does no one think these new young people are ever going to get old or need care? It's a giant Ponzi scheme. It's absolutely mad. A lot of this labour problems are going to be solved by AI and robotics, and actually gradually slowing down the population would be a fantastic thing to do for the environment as well, by the way.
Well, yes, as long as you don't care about what happens to individuals. In the meantime, you're talking about in the long run.
I'm talking about a gradual slowdown.
Right, a gradual slowdown, which would cause untold misery to millions of people until some sort of equilibrium is reached at some point in the future.
It's going to happen eventually. It's what happens in every Ponzi scheme, Nick.
Yeah, it's a cute phrase you've got there, Nick. But I don't think it's a. It's not a Ponzi scheme. It's called life. Families want to have children. It's just that at the moment, this country and many others in the West aren't producing enough children in order to take care of the older people who have in the past had those children. We're not replacing ourselves at the rate that is required to maintain the population. So the population is going to get increasingly smaller and older. So who's going to pay for the pensions of those people?
But the economy grows all the time, and it only has to be a gradual. It has to be a gradual slowdown. We don't need population growth. We just need a gradual. By the way, everyone said the Japanese economy, which has the oldest percentage of over 65s in the world by far, because they've had super low birth rate for 20 or 30 years, would collapse and it would be terrible. But actually, they're one of the most automated and mechanized societies in the world, and their economy, despite the deflation, despite all those things, is actually it's a far better place to live and doing far better than we are. Honestly, you can't keep having more people and more immigrants and think this is going to solve the problem, because it absolutely is not. It's just going to push the problem further down the road for those future generations.
Well, either way, there is a problem that is going to get pushed down the road that will reach us eventually. It just depends on what kind of country you want to live in, I suppose, what kind of world you envision would be best for the future. Thanks, Nick. 0345 6060 973. So do you subscribe to that rather stark opinion about our future? Should people be dissuaded from having children? He didn't think that the benefit cap should be raised from 2 plus children. It should be eliminated altogether. Do not encourage people to have children. 0345 6060 973. More of your thoughts on this to come, but immediately after the news, a report has shown that the bosses of Britain's largest companies took home record pay packets for a third year in a row. The High Pay Centre's analysis says that on average, FTSE 100 CEOs are paid 122 times the median UK full-time worker. I'll be joined by that think tank's director, and I'll keep taking your calls on two-child benefit caps on 0345 6060 973. Just past 11:30 on LBC The News Headlines with Tim Daly.
Leaders across Europe have been offering their full support to Ukraine following an online summit hosted by the Prime Minister. They've also praised President Zelensky's desire for a just and lasting peace ahead of talks with Donald Trump tomorrow. 6 people have been arrested during demonstrations outside a hotel in London, which has been used to house asylum seekers. The Metropolitan Police says they were detained near the Britannia International at Canary Wharf. And one of the British faces of the 1960s, the actor Terence Stamp, has died at the age of 87. He later went on to play General Zod in the original run of Superman films featuring Christopher Reeve. LBC weather, dry and clear for most areas overnight, but cloud will gradually build across eastern and central parts of the UK, which may bring some drizzle. We'll see a low of 12 degrees.
This is LBC.
Calling all little explorers. The hunt for squishmallows is on. Who will your little one find in their Happy Meal? Will they chill out with Cam on the beach? Or rock on with Hallie? Some fun, some food, it's all inside this Happy Meal. Until the 25th of August, from 11 a.m, Squishmallows comprise toys only, subject to availability. Fair ordering policy applies.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group clinics. With over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Who's a good human? Alex is. Because today's dog walk with Lulu the Corgi has turned into an off-grid adventure. But wherever Lulu's nose takes her, Alex will always gladly follow. That's why he also chooses butternut box for Lulu's meals. Freshly prepared and served straight from the fridge, helping Lulu thrive from nose to tail. Meaning one less trek for Alex, as we deliver each box straight to your door. Ready to join thousands of good humans? Go to butternutbox.com to fetch 25% off your first box with code GOODHUMAN.
Feel the heat whatever the weather with Waitrose's summer food range. Like our fiery, fragrant, hot honey halloumi kebabs, which can be cooked to perfection, either on the barbecue or under the grill. and our succulent #1 red prawn and monkfish, tossed in a smoked paprika, garlic and red chilli butter. Pop in a brioche bun and enjoy, come rain or shine. Let your summer side out with Waitrose. Selected lines and stores subject to availability.
Nick Abbott on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
The heads of the UK's most valuable companies have been paid more than ever before, with the average chief executive paid more than 100 times that of the average worker. And the amount at which their pay is increasing seems to be going up exponentially. Let's talk about this with Luke Hildyard. Luke is director of the think tank, the High Pay Centre. Good evening, Luke.
Good evening.
Am I right in thinking that in the 1960s, in the US and the UK, the average chief executive officer's pay in a top company was about 20 times that of the pay of an average worker? How has it got to 100 times that of the average worker?
Yeah, that's exactly right. 60s, 70s, early 80s, you'd be talking between 10 and 20 times the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the UK compared to the typical UK worker. It's steadily increased since then. You'd be talking probably more like 50 or 60 times in the 1990s, and now got to well over 100 times. And these are obviously extraordinary amounts of money. It illustrates the gap between those at the top and everybody else within society, which makes a lot of people uncomfortable and fosters division and a lot of other social problems. And then when big employers spend tens of millions of pounds on just a couple of top bosses, it also inevitably has implications for how much they have left over for the rest of the workforce.
And this disparity seems to be increasing faster, doesn't it? In 2023, Chief Executive Officer pay went up by 16% just in that year, 16. And yet real wages for the average full-time worker went down and aren't expected to return to their 2008 value until 2028. How is it that the awareness of this has increased, and yet it's the sort of unfairness of it has only got worse?
Well, it's really interesting because the average increase in CEO pay isn't driven by increases across the board. It's driven by a smaller number of the largest companies paying even more and more. So the median pay of the 100 FTSE 100 companies last year was 4.6 million, which is still an extraordinary amount of money. But the number of companies paying their CEO over 10 million has increased by 30%, and the highest payout of all was £59 million. I mean, that really is so pretty extraordinary. When you think 59 million, 10 million, 20 million, if the CEOs were being paid a mere 1 million, or dare I say a few £100,000, which is what they'd be getting if the ratio was still 10 times the average UK worker as it was in past decades, you'd be saving a hell of a lot of money on the executive pay that you could then distribute across the wider workforce, or you could invest it in innovation and productivity. So it isn't just about the salaciousness of the extravagance of the executive pay increases. There are real implications for pay and productivity across the wider economy from this very generous largesse towards the CEO.
And it also has an effect on growth, which is the government's mantra, isn't it? For two reasons. One is that if you're earning £50 million a year, it's highly unlikely that you're going to spend it. It's just going to sit in a bank in an offshore account, doing nothing for the economy at all. But if you spread that same amount of money around the workforce, then it is highly likely that they would spend all of it, thereby revivifying the economy. And the other side is that we have a famously bad level of reinvestment in this country. Research and development is almost an afterthought in this country, particularly compared to our European neighbours. And that's the effect of paying these top men, mostly men, this kind of money, because the companies don't have the cash to reinvest because they're giving it all to the executives.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right on both points. low and middle income households, obviously, if they receive any additional income, they're more likely to spend it. They might get a nicer car or get some work done on their house or just go out for a meal or a few drinks more regularly. So that money goes into the productive economy, creating jobs and income for businesses. If, as you say, somebody who's very rich, who's already living a comparatively luxurious life, gets a windfall, a pay increase, they're more likely to squirrel it away. So it's not going to do so much for the wider economy. If you look at how we've raised living standards and income throughout history, it's about growing the pie, creating more wealth in aggregate, but also ensuring that the pie is shared fairly too, i.e. making sure the wealth we create as a country is distributing more evenly. And I think this research shows we're not doing that well enough at the moment, that if we want to raise living standards and making working people across the country more prosperous, addressing the problem of the excess income and wealth of those at the top is the pragmatic thing to do. And
that fact about a lack of reinvestment in companies, that does really suggest a sort of almost a sort of nihilistic approach to running a business. The top people just want to make as much money as they possibly can in as short a time as possible, and to hell with the long-term consequences for the business they're running. It's just not sustainable.
Yes, exactly. Again, I very much agree with that. These pay packages, because they're mostly tied to the company's profitability and the returns it generates to shareholders, the CEOs get a big bonus if they raise the share price or pay out a big dividend to the shareholders. It incentivises them to cut costs, to hold down pay for the wider workforce, to maybe limit investment in order to generate more money to pay back to the shareholders. So that's not very good for the business in the long term, nor for the wider UK economy as a whole, when lots and lots of businesses are doing it.
And share buybacks is a sort of cancer of the business, isn't it? Because companies, rather than reinvest in training and machinery and so on, they will use any extra money to buy their own shares back, thereby increasing the value of the shares because they're suddenly in demand. And that will kick in bonuses for chief executive officers. It all seems to be run not for the benefit of the business, but for the benefit of the people in the C-suites.
Exactly, and as you say, there are some really perverse incentives with share buybacks. The companies say they only undertake share buybacks when there's no better use for the money than buying back their own shares. I think if you look at most businesses, it's very hard to argue in many cases that there's literally nothing that they can do with their money other than buy their own shares, as opposed to giving workers a pay rise or investing in the productivity and innovative capacity of the business. One of the reforms that we recommend in the report that's out today is that we should give worker directors more representation on company boards. It's compulsory in most of Europe for firms to have on the board directors who are workers' representatives who are elected